The first thing I did after being reborn was end my engagement with Ethan Lewis. In my previous life, I had spent years exhausting myself for him. But when I fell ill and was bedridden, he couldn't even wait for me to die behind my back. He was already planning a grand wedding with Lily White. Their wedding day was the same as my funeral, this time. I refused to be that foolish. While Ethan was busy cutting ties with the Lewis family to avoid marrying me and running to serve Lily and her mother, I went straight to the Lewis estate. Emily, marrying into the Lewis family was your grandfather's last wish. It was also an arrangement made long ago between our families, said Mr. Lewis, the family patriarch. As he pulled out a yellowed marriage contract, I read it over several times before my gaze landed on the man standing behind him. If I have to get married in half a month, then I'll marry him, I said, pointing to Liam Lewis. The entire room fell silent. Mr. Lewis looked stunned. Emily, marriage isn't a joke. You and Ethan were promised to each other from birth. You grew up as childhood sweethearts. How can you suddenly refuse to marry him and say you'll marry Liam instead? He wasn't wrong since childhood. I'd known I was destined to be Ethan's wife. For years, that had been my greatest wish. But he never loved me. In my previous life, Ethan only married me because of the family arrangement. On our wedding day, the first words he said were, Emily, since you insisted on marrying me, be prepared for me to never love you. Back then, I thought he was just angry that love would come with time. But I was wrong. Even after we married, his heart belonged to Lily. When we were in our 60s, I would still find him sitting in his study, staring at her old love letters, silently weeping. Before I died, he told me coldly, if it weren't for my promise to my grandfather, I would have divorced you long ago and married Lily. You ruined us. It was then I realized he didn't just fail to love me. He hated me. He even held his wedding with Lily on the day of my funeral. This time, I vowed never to make the same mistake. Mr. Lewis, I'm not joking, I said firmly. When our families arranged this marriage, the contract only said I'd marry someone from the Lewis family. It never said it had to be Ethan. Liam Lewis was Mr. Lewis's youngest son, born when he was over 50. He was only 5 years older than Ethan. In my past life, Liam had left the family after Mr. Lewis's death and never married. My impression of him was vague. He was quiet, mature, and steady. Unlike Ethan, he didn't seem burdened by obsession or arrogance. If I had to marry someone, I'd rather choose a man who could respect me. That was far better than a marriage filled with resentment. Mr. Lewis sighed. You make a valid point, but we still need to hear Liam's thoughts. Liam stood tall and composed, his white shirt crisp and flawless. When he furrowed his brows, my heart skipped a beat. I'd been so desperate to escape Ethan's nightmare that I hadn't considered whether Liam would accept to my surprise. He said calmly, as long as you've thought it through. I have no objections. Mr. Lewis smiled with relief. Then the wedding will proceed as planned in half a month. Everything at the Grand Horizon Hotel is already arranged. Before he could finish, Ethan burst through the door, fury radiating from him. He glared at me before turning to his grandfather. Grandpa, this is the modern age. Childhood engagements are outdated. If you don't let me marry Lily, I'll never come back to this family. Mr. Lewis slammed the table in anger. How many times do I have to tell you? A woman like Lily who had a child out of wedlock has no place in this family. Do you have any idea how much ridicule I've endured because of you? You're embarrassing us. Ethan, blinded by his obsession, refused to listen. I don't care what you say. I'll only ever marry Lily. If you don't approve, I'll move into the dorms and never set foot here again. As he stormed past me, he sneered, Complain all you want, it won't change anything. I'll never marry you. Give up. He thought I had come to pressure him into marrying me. He had no idea my only wish now was to stay as far away from him as possible. Mr. Lewis sighed, waving off the butler. Let him go. If he wants to cut ties with his family over a woman, so be it. True to his word, Ethan moved out of the estate and into his work dorm. At the school cafeteria, I often saw him with Lily. Some colleagues whispered in anger, Emily, it's bad enough that Lily's now a substitute teacher here. They're always together. People might think she's the one marrying him. I only smiled faintly and continued eating. "It doesn't matter," I said softly. I didn't want to stir up drama. Ethan and Lily no longer had anything to do with me. Since I wasn't marrying Ethan, there was no reason for me to stay in the house Mr. Lewis had prepared. I decided to move out. But when I returned to pack my things, I found them tossed carelessly into the hallway. Miss Taylor. "You're back," Lily said sweetly, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. "I'm so sorry, but Ethan asked me to move in with my daughter. There wasn't enough space, so I had to put your belongings out here. I hope you don't mind the inconvenience." In my previous life, Ethan had done the same thing, bringing Lily into our home and forcing me out. Back then, I'd been heartbroken, crying and demanding answers. He'd only laughed coldly and said, "We're not even married yet. When did you get the right to dictate anything about a Lewis's property?" This time, I didn't shed a single tear. I felt nothing. Without saying a word, I quietly began gathering my belongings. My silence seemed to unsettle Lily. "You're not jealous?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Aren't you afraid Ethan will end up marrying me instead of you?" I looked up, my gaze cold as ice. "You and a dog? What a perfect match." Lily's face turned crimson as tears welled up in her eyes. "Who are you calling, eh?" she screamed, but before she could finish, Ethan appeared. Seeing Lily cry, he immediately jumped to conclusions. "Emily, all she asked was for you to move out temporarily. Did you really have to bully her like this? Or are you just after the Lewis family's money and can't stand losing your meal ticket?" Ethan's arrogance and self-righteousness were unbearable. Once he made up his mind, no one could change it. I didn't want to waste another moment entangled with them. Without a word, I turned and walked away. Behind me, his voice rang out, sharp and relentless. "Emily Taylor, a woman like you doesn't stand a chance of marrying me. Don't even dream about it. I'm not showing up to that wedding. You can count on being humiliated." After moving back to the employee dormitory, I avoided any contact with Ethan and Lily. Still, rumors about the two of them spread like wildfire through the school. Every time I passed by, I could feel the pitying stares of my colleagues. A week later, the principal called me into his office. His expression was grave as he gestured toward a letter on his desk. "Miss Taylor, someone has filed a report accusing you of plagiarism in the teacher writing competition. This is serious. The higher-ups are paying close attention." The accusation hit me like lightning. "Principal, every word in that article was mine. How could it possibly be plagiarism? And who exactly am I accused of copying?" The principal sighed, looking frustrated. "The accuser provided drafts and outlines as evidence. Even if I wanted to suppress this, I can't. I think it's best you take a few days off while this is handled." His words echoed in my mind as I stumbled out of the office, numb. Outside, I spotted Lily standing nearby, a smug smile curling her lips. In that moment, everything clicked. Most of my belongings had been left in the new house on Lily, could have taken my drafts. "It was you," said, glaring at her. Lily didn't even try to deny it. Seeing no one around, she smirked. "Yes, it was me. So what? It's your fault for leaving your things lying around?" My hands trembled with anger, but Lily only looked more pleased with herself. "Emily, you took my manso. Don't blame me for taking your job. If you don't leave, how am I supposed to get promoted from substitute to full-time teacher?" So that was it. She'd destroyed my reputation for her own gain. Before I could say anything, the principal called her into his office. I had no choice but to file an appeal. When I did, the higher-up simply said, "We already have proof that your work was plagiarized. All you can do now is wait for the decision." The decision came quickly. I was fired. The principal told me that if it weren't for my past contributions, they would have made an example of me at a public disciplinary meeting. How laughable, the real author expelled, while the thief basked in praise and a promotion. That same evening, Ethan threw a celebratory dinner for Lily's promotion. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. When I arrived, I picked up a glass of wine and poured it straight over. So he knew all along that I was the one who'd been plagiarized. In fact, it was likely he'd helped her fake the evidence. Without thinking, I slapped him hard across the face. "Ethan Lewis, you make me sick. Don't worry, I wouldn't marry you in 1,000 lifetimes." But Ethan dismissed my words as spite. In his mind, was so certain of my devotion that he believed I could never truly let him go. I thought he'd never admit fault, but 3 days later, he did something I never expected. "He came to me to apologize, Emily," he began. "Lily just wanted to stay at the school so badly that she acted impulsively and took your drafts. I'm here to apologize on her behalf." After being fired, I'd returned to my small apartment in the crowded tenement block. When Ethan showed up, he looked uneasy standing in the courtyard. "Lily's been reported for getting her position through backdoor connections," he said. "I admit to pulling some strings, but Lily's capable. She deserves that job." "Her ability?" I scoffed. "You mean the ability to take bribes from parents or turn a blind eye to the wealthy?" He fell silent. I stared at him coldly. "If you come forward and confirm that Lily wrote that article and that you were the one plagiarized, she'll be able to stay," he pleaded. It was the first time Ethan had ever apologized, but it wasn't for me. It was for her. Worse, he had the audacity to make such a shameless request. "Get out," I said flatly, turning my face away. I refused to waste another second on him. The day after tomorrow was my wedding with Liam. I still had preparations to make. I had no time for Ethan's nonsense, but Ethan seemed offended, as if his pride had been wounded. "It must have been you who reported her, right?" he snapped. "Emily Taylor, you're such a despicable woman." "Let me tell you this. If you help her this one time, I'll agree to marry you. You'd better think carefully about it." To him, marrying me was apparently an act of charity. Unfortunately for him, I no longer cared. The next day, one of my close colleagues insisted on taking me out for a meal. "You know how foreigners love their bachelorette parties," she said playfully. "Let me give you one too." Unable to turn her down, I agreed and followed her to a restaurant. On my way to the restroom, I didn't realize that my past was about to catch up with me once again. As I was heading to the restroom, I overheard a familiar voice coming from the private room next door. It was Ethan. If it weren't for Lily, I'd never have agreed to marry that woman. "Just looking at her makes me sick," he said, peeking through the slightly open door. I saw Ethan with his arm around Lily, speaking to her with sickening affection. "Don't worry," he murmured. "I'll never love anyone but you. Marrying her tomorrow is just to please my grandfather and keep you at the school." Lily blushed and leaned shyly into his chest as their friends teased them. Emboldened by a few glasses of wine, Ethan looked completely shameless. A sharp sting of betrayal pierced through me. I thought I had become numb to his behavior, but hearing him belittle me so casually in front of another woman still hurt. So this was Ethan in his 20s, arrogant, foolish, and utterly laughable. How had I ever spent decades married to a man like this? A bitter smile touched my lips as I whispered to myself, "Ethan, your presence at tomorrow's wedding won't be needed." The next day, my wedding to Liam went on as planned. The guests were visibly surprised when they realized the groom wasn't Ethan. But out of respect for the Lewis family's status, no one dared to comment. They simply smiled politely and offered their congratulations as Liam and I made our rounds to toast the guests. Ethan arrived late, with Lily on his arm, dressed in a long red gown. The scene was eerily similar to my past life back then. Ethan had disappeared on our wedding day, turning me into a public joke. If Mr. Lewis hadn't stepped in, I might have completely broken down. Not only had Ethan abandoned me, but he'd brought Lily to the ceremony, dressed almost exactly like me. Standing proudly at his side for everyone to see, I had swallowed that humiliation once, but this time was different. Ethan's face froze when he saw Liam standing beside me, dressed as the groom. "Uncle Liam, why are you wearing a groom's suit?" Ethan asked, confusion clouding his voice. Liam raised an eyebrow and replied calmly, "Because I'm the groom." "What did you expect me to wear? And look at yourself, you reek of alcohol and you're still in yesterday's clothes. What kind of impression are you trying to make?" Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. "What's going on? Isn't today my wedding day?" he demanded, his voice trembling. Mr. Lewis chuckled coldly, slamming his cane against the floor. You didn't want to get married, remember? Well, now you've gotten your wish. So what are you complaining about? Ethan turned toward me sharply, frustration twisting his face. Emily Taylor. Did you say something to Grandpa and Uncle Liam? Did you pull some kind of trick? I knew you couldn't be trusted. Before I could reply, Liam stepped forward, his tone firm and protective. Emily Taylor isn't someone you can speak to so casually. Based on seniority, you should be calling her aunt. Ethan stumbled back, stunned, nearly knocking Lily off balance. Ethan, this is perfect. Lily exclaimed, hope lighting up her face. If your grandfather isn't forcing you to marry Emily, then we can finally be together. Her voice practically dripped with ambition. But before she could finish, Mr. Lewis cut her off with a sharp scoff. Not just anyone can marry into the Lewis family, he said coldly. If you think you can bring in a woman like her, it'll only happen over my dead body. Lily's face turned bright red as tears streamed down her cheeks. Ethan, you promised to marry me. How can you let your family humiliate me like this? Ethan hesitated, torn between her pleas and his grandfather's authority. Around us, guests began whispering. Isn't she that girl from the White family? The one who ran off years ago and came back pregnant? I heard her parents were so furious they passed away. And now? She wants to marry into the Lewis family? Lily's humiliation deepened. She stomped her foot and ran out of the hall, covering her face with her hands. Ethan finally seemed to snap out of it, turning to Mr. Lewis. Why didn't anyone tell me the groom had changed? Why wasn't I informed? Mr. Lewis glared at him. I called your school several times, but you refused to answer, thinking I was trying to force you back here. I even sent letters, but you returned them all. Ethan's face went pale. He stood frozen for a long moment, then finally chased after Lily. Thankfully, the disruption didn't ruin the wedding. That evening, I sat on the bed, the red sheets glowing under the lamplight, and finally asked what had been on my mind. Was it you who reported Lily to the high ropes? I asked Liam. Only you could have intervened that decisively. Liam nodded calmly. You married me. I won't let you be wronged again. I also spoke to the school. If you want to return to teaching, your position is waiting for you. His words warmed my heart, but I hesitated. In my past life, I'd stayed at that school until retirement, only to realize I never truly loved teaching. I'd like to try working at a newspaper instead. I admitted softly. I worried Liam might object, like many men did when their wives wanted to work after marriage. But instead he smiled and said, do whatever makes you happy. If it doesn't work out, I'll be here for you. Encouraged, I slipped my prepared manuscript into a mailbox slot later that evening. If it got accepted, it would give me an edge for the interview. While passing a department store, I suddenly remembered Liam only ever wore white shirts, so I decided to pick out some fabric for him. To my dismay, I ran into Ethan and Lily there. Lily was clinging to his arm, pointing at the exact same fabric I had just chosen. This one, she told the shop assistant smugly. Wrap it up for me. My mood soured instantly. Even the fabric I'd liked moments ago now seemed dull. I slipped the coupon back into my pocket and told the assistant politely, give it to her. Some people just loved taking what didn't belong to them. Lily bristled, glaring at me. Don't act so high and mighty, just because you can't have him, she snapped. You didn't seem so dignified when you were chasing after Ethan like a lovesick puppy. I glanced at Ethan, taking him in from head to toe with a faint smirk. Charming, isn't he? I said dryly. Ethan, who had been silent until now, suddenly turned cold. Emily Taylor, he snapped, don't think you're special just because you married my uncle. You only managed that because of that old marriage contract. Lily's different. She loves me for who I am, not for my family's wealth. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a flicker of unease cross Lily's face, but she quickly hid it. She leaned against Ethan's shoulder, pretending as if the whole world revolved around him. You know, she said sweetly, we should thank you, Emily. Without you, Ethan and I might never have ended up together. We're family now. When the baby arrives, don't forget to come to the celebration. Lily placed a delicate hand over her stomach, her face glowing with a fake maternal smile. It was obvious she was trying to provoke me using the baby to secure her place in the Lewis family. I couldn't help the cold sneer that curled my lips. And here I thought dogs could change their ways, I said evenly. Having a child out of wedlock's that something to brag about? A few years ago, people like you would have been thrown in jail for this. I brushed past them without another glance, as expected. It wasn't long before Ethan started pestering Mr. Lewis to let him marry Lily. I already told you, Mr. Lewis thundered, his voice shaking with rage. As long as I'm alive, that woman will never set foot in my house. But Ethan, ever stubborn, wouldn't back down. Grandpa, it's the modern age. People believe in free love now. Besides, Lily's carrying my child. That baby is part of the Lewis family. Instead of softening, Mr. Lewis grew even angrier. A child conceived out of wedlock. That's no heir of mine, it's a disgrace. How did this family raise someone as shameless as you? His fury boiled over, and he struck Ethan hard on the leg with his cane. If you're so determined to marry her, then get out of my house and don't ever come back. Ethan was kicked out of the Lewis estate and held a small wedding with Lily in the house that was once supposed to be ours. Only his drinking buddies attended. He had always thrived on the respect that came with the Lewis name, but once he cut ties with the family, that respect vanished. Even Lily's tone soon changed. How can you call yourself a man, she snapped one night, when your teacher's salary can't even buy me a decent length of fabric? Her complaints grew louder and more frequent until Ethan, desperate and defeated, came crawling back to Mr. Lewis, begging for forgiveness. Mr. Lewis, however, remained firm. He sent his answer through a guard. You can come back with the child, but that woman will never set foot through these doors. So Ethan stood outside the gates, humiliated and helpless. Meanwhile, I received a letter from the newspaper I had applied to. They had accepted me. I would start work next month. Life finally seemed to be turning around. Without Ethan in it, the world felt brighter, lighter, and freer. One evening, as I walked home from work, I overheard a few colleagues whispering nearby. Did you hear? The Lewis grandson got cheated on. Yeah, apparently it was with the principal from the next school over. Caught in bed, no less. His wife walked in on them, and they were both completely naked. Hearing that, I couldn't help but smile. Karma, it seemed, had found its way back to Lily and Ethan. The scandal spread like wildfire. The principal's wife, a fiery woman, had made sure every neighbor heard every detail. Lily's affair had been an attempt to claw her way back into a teaching job, but the fallout was brutal. The principal was fired for misconduct, and Lily, pregnant and unemployed, got off with a warning after a short scolding. But the principal's wife wasn't done. She took her revenge straight to Ethan's door, throwing buckets of waste at his house and publicly shaming them in every disgusting way imaginable. Ethan, humiliated and furious, finally broke. He knelt before Mr. Lewis, his pride completely shattered. "Grandpa!" "I was wrong," he said quietly. Mr. Lewis was still angry, but he couldn't bring himself to abandon his grandson completely. Ethan was allowed back into the family, but the shame that followed him was heavy and inescapable. When I saw him again, Ethan looked worn down, 10 years older, his shoulders slumped under the weight of regret. "Emily," he said awkwardly, "I was wrong about everything. I didn't realize Lily was that kind of woman." I looked at him calmly. "It's all in the past," I replied, my tone flat. Once, I had hated Ethan deeply. But now, standing beside Liam and doing work I loved, I realized I didn't even care enough to hate him anymore. You only hate what still matters to you. And Ethan no longer did. He hesitated, then said, "I know there's no real affection between you and my uncle. Let's fix our mistakes. You and I, we were childhood sweethearts. If you're willing to divorce him, I can." I cut him off sharply. "Do you think I'm some object you can summon or discard whenever you please? How pathetic. Only after being abandoned and humiliated do you finally remember me." I met his eyes, my voice steady. "I'm happy now, Ethan. And who says I don't have feelings for Liam? He's 10,000 times better than you. Next time we meet, don't forget to address me properly as Aunt." Without waiting for his reply, I turned and walked away, without sparing him a glance. It was time to talk to Liam about moving out. Living under the same roof as my ex-fiancé wasn't exactly ideal, and I had no interest in becoming the subject of gossip, Just as I rounded the corner, strong arms suddenly pulled me into a warm embrace. It was Liam. "We'll move out," he said firmly. His voice left no room for argument. I looked up at him, teasing softly. "Are you jealous?" He didn't answer, but I noticed the faint redness on his ears. The move went smoothly. Mr. Lewis, ever understanding, raised no objections when Liam informed him of our decision. But just as we were finalizing the move, an unwelcome voice pierced the air outside the estate. "Ethan Lewis, get out here." It was Lily. Her belly was round now, her floral dress stretched tight over her swollen frame. She looked exhausted but still full of fury. "You're responsible for my pregnancy," she shouted, her tone shrill and desperate. "You left me alone and pregnant. Have you no shame? If you don't come out, I'll report you for harassment. I'll barge in if I have to. Let's see who dares stop me." At the gates, the security guards exchanged uneasy glances, but stood firm. Blocking her path, just as Lily was about to start another scene, Ethan finally appeared. "You dare show your face here?" he roared, his expression twisted with anger. "You've been out disgracing yourself, and now you have the nerve to come to my family's home." His voice shook with fury. If the guards hadn't been holding him back, he might have done something reckless. "Disgrace myself?" Lily shot back, her voice high and sharp. "Everything I did was for our family. Do you think I'd have stayed with you if you weren't part of the Lewis family? You're nothing but trash cast out by your own kin. If I can't go back to teaching, how are we supposed to survive on your tiny salary? Should we starve?" Lily's words cut through the air, sharp and full of resentment. Ethan looked stunned, as if he was seeing her true colors for the very first time. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood off to the side, watching the argument unfold, but I quickly lost interest. Their shouting match was pathetic, and I had better things to do, like finishing the move. Just as I turned to leave, Lily rushed toward me and grabbed my arm tightly. "Emily Taylor, this is your doing, isn't it? You're the reason Mr. Lewis won't let me into the family." Her grip was painfully firm. I tried to pull away, glancing around for Liam, but he was nowhere in sight. A flicker of panic rose inside me. "What are you talking about?" "Let go," I demanded, but Lily ignored me, her voice dripping with venom. "Seeing me like this must make you so happy, doesn't it? Just because you married Liam doesn't make you any better than me. We're both women who used men to climb up in the world. If I'm miserable, don't think you'll have it easy either." Her hateful glare burned into me before she suddenly shoved me hard. Whether she meant to or not, I stumbled backward and hit my head against a stone. Darkness swallowed me whole. When I finally opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was Liam's face, lined with guilt and exhaustion. His usually neat jaw was covered in stubble. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Emily, you're awake," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't protect you like I should have. I swear I'll never let anything happen to you again. Are you in pain? Does your head still hurt?" It was the first time I'd heard Liam speak so much all at once. Despite the dull ache in my head, I couldn't help but smile slightly and shake my head. As I tried to sit up, Liam jumped to help adjusting my pillow, handing me water, tucking the blanket around me. Watching him fumble so nervously made me tease. "I just fell. It's not a big deal. At worst, I'll have a small scar." Liam's face flushed red, and he hesitated before saying softly, "You need to be careful. You're about to become a mom." For a moment, I thought I misheard him. My heart started racing. "What did you just say? Are you serious?" Liam nodded quickly, his face glowing with joy. The realization hit me like a wave. I was pregnant. After everything I'd endured, I was finally going to be a mother. Happiness rushed through me, pure and overwhelming. That bliss was interrupted by a knock at the door. Uncle Liam. "I need to talk to her," Ethan's voice called from outside. Liam looked at me, silently asking for permission. I nodded, and he reluctantly stepped out. A moment later, Ethan entered, guilt etched across his face. "Emily, I'm sorry," he said, voice low and heavy. "I never imagined she would hurt you like that. I know I've done so many awful things." Seeing that I remained silent, he finally revealed the real reason he'd come. I know you won't forgive me, but please, help Lily. Grandpa's furious with her and her life will be miserable. But she's pregnant with my child. That baby is a Lewis. Please, Emily, talk to him for her. His tone was desperate, his eyes pleading. Please, Emily, I swear I'll make it up to you. I looked at him, a faint pity stirring for the broken man he'd become. Ethan had been betrayed and made a fool of, but my sympathy only went so far. I let out a quiet chuckle, which seemed to give him hope, till I spoke. Since you're my nephew, I'll give you some advice as your elder. Get a paternity test. And if that's not possible, you might want to get your own health checked. He froze, confusion spreading across his face. I remembered everything from my past life, how Ethan and I, though married, never had children. It wasn't because of me, but because of him. He was infertile. So when Lily claimed to be pregnant, I'd known she was lying. Back then, I had kept quiet. It wasn't my problem. But now that Lily had hurt me again, I saw no reason to hold back. Ethan's eyes widened in shock. He stammered, asking why I'd say something so cruel. When I didn't answer, panic spread across his face. The more I refused to speak, the more unhinged he became, till he finally ran out like a madman. Days later, Ethan's name appeared in the newspaper. He had killed Lily in the very house that was once meant to be ours. He'd set the place on fire and died with her. By the time anyone found them, it was too late. They said Lily had screamed his secret for everyone to hear, his infertility, driving him into despair. Unable to face the humiliation, he ended it all. Mr. Lewis aged overnight from the shock of burying his grandson. Liam and I wanted to bring him to live with us, but he refused. It's enough that you visit when you can, he'd said quietly, years later. My young granddaughter tilted her head as I finished telling the story, her tiny pigtails bouncing as she listened with wide eyes. Before I could continue, a warm voice called from the kitchen, "Stop telling stories and come eat. I made your favorite sweet and sour fish." I smiled, brushing a hand gently over my granddaughter's cheek. "And then Grandpa called us to dinner," I said softly. Taking her little hand in mine as we walked to the living room, there stood Liam, holding a platter of sweet and sour fish, smiling at us with the same warmth he'd shown me all those years ago.